let's go ahead and go over what we're doing. We're going to pass out thingamaboppers. Who are my 15 people who are like in the workshop? All right, spread around. This is for you, okay? I will explain it to the rest of you. You take this one. Everyone else, you take this one, okay? Very easy. Follow these instructions and you too can be a famous fantasy novelist. So, we will pass them around.
Please notice that on the top there, the small ones, there are two parts to that. So take...
Oh, there's two parts?
Yeah, take the one that says English, whatever at the top, and then the second part has...
That's complicated. Wow. Oh, wow, that's how they did it. Okay, I need one of the other ones so I can read it to you. So, there are two parts to that, which I totally knew all along and did intentionally. Okay, so they did this so that you have all the contact info. Okay, so this is two classes, all right? We are going, this was the compromise, the sort of idea that the English department pitched at me, which was really a good idea. For years, lots of people have wanted to sit in on the lecture portion of my writing class. It doesn't quite fit with the normal 318 writing thing to have a big old lecture in the front of it. But we've always had people kind of crowding in. We've had lots of people wanting to audit that course. And they said, well, why don't we make the 1 credit hour lecture series that goes along with it? Which I thought was a great idea for a number of reasons. Number one, I don't have to generate 50 auditing codes on the first day. Which is awesome, because I always forget how to do it. Number two, it allows you guys to actually get a credit for coming to this class, which you really should at least get something, rather than for a lot of people, taking and auditing a 3 credit hour class screwed up their schedules and the number of credits they could do, where instead getting a 1 credit hour class that they get an A for is much more valuable. So we split this off. So those of you who are in the lecture portion, excuse me, what you're going to do is you are going to get 1 credit hour, and it's going to be an A if you fulfill your weekly assignment, which is to write me a paragraph to prove you were here. And I will just divide up the week into points, and you will get, I think there's 14 of these, so we'll divide 100 by 14, give you points equal that, and it'll be straight on the normal BYU English Department grading thing. So I think on that, it's probably going to be, 7 points per class? Someone want to, oh, we're all English people. No, we're not, because lots of weird people take it. I mean, lots of math and science and horticulturists take this class. Well, we're just going to run it like that, right? 7%. So if you miss one class, you still get an A, okay? That's just what I'll say. You miss the first class, you miss one, you get an A. You miss the next one, and it knocks you down to a B+. We're going to probably skip A-. Does that make sense? So just come to class, and you get your A. Everybody's happy, and we're excited. The people who are taking the workshop portion, after I do the lecture, we will split off and go into a lecture room next door, or not lecture, a smaller room next door. I don't know how this, but anyway, we'll split off and we'll do little writing groups workshop, and we'll split you into 3 writing groups, 5 each, and I will sit in on one of the writing groups each week and give you feedback and try to keep an eye on your story and help you out. All right? Is that portion clear to everybody?
Yes.
All right, let's talk now about the people who want to add the class. I already gave this explanation once, but how many people came here wanting to add the workshop portion? Okay, so you're aware, or you've been scared off by me explaining it earlier. How many people here want to add the lecture portion? Okay, we can probably handle that. They may have to give us another classroom, but we can probably handle that. I don't know what they want me to do. When's the ad drop deadline? Monday. Well, I might just add a bunch of you and then see what the ramifications are. What's that? Yeah, it's better to ask for forgiveness and permission. We're all fitting pretty much right now, except that dude who has to sit in the corner, stand in the corner. You can steal a chair from another room. It's totally okay. We do it every year. So, yeah, feel free to steal a chair. Just leave the door cracked so that we get ventilation. We probably will do that. I don't know. We'll see. we'll decide that in a few minutes after we go over what's going to be going on in the course and things like that. And hopefully then everyone will be happy and life will be grand and BYU won't get too mad at me. Yeah, my other assistant Peter was emailing us on the way. He's like, you have this exact number of spots left, make sure. And I'm like, never pay attention to that, Peter. So thank you.
You only have 10 ad codes.
We have 10 ad codes. We can generate more. We just log in and just like push a button. But I think there were about 10 people who raised their hands. I forget how to do it, but it's actually pretty easy once you remember how to do it. So that's what we're going to do, okay? Now, here's the thing. Those of you in the lecture portion, I would recommend to you that you pretend you're in the workshop portion too. It's going to be most valuable to you if you do. I'm going to talk to you all as if you are all taking that course, okay? Are you really in the class, not wanting to add, and I'm making you sit on the floor?
No, it's fine.
You're good?
Yeah.
All right, thanks for taking one for the team, man.
No worries.
I think there's room on the piano bench if you want to get cozy, but you know. This is how it's going to go. I'm not really a professor, I just pretend. It's so awesome. So, I would suggest to you that you pretend you're taking the class. The part of the fun of the lecture series part, though, is that you don't really have to do it. The people in the actual writing groups, it's going to be a lot more rigorous. You guys are going to have to write a lot. You applied to get into this. It was a difficult application process. I assume they took care of it, but I told them to be mean to them. And so our goal is, I'm going to theme this year toward writing a novella. This is my goal for us. I've been doing this a lot recently, and it's been working really well for me. Though the biggest part of this class for you, the biggest takeaway is, this is a tool for you to hopefully help improve your writing. The number one rule is, ignore me when it's not working for you. If what you want to do is write short stories, write short stories. If what you want to do is write a 10,000-page epic fantasy novel, go for it, okay? Do what is going to make you productive and effective as a writer. And lots of writers will give you writing advice. In fact, I haven't ever met one who won't give you writing advice. It's what we kind of do. I'm not sure why, but we love it. We all have advice. The issue is a lot of it contradicts advice given by other writers, or it contradicts itself, because what we really mean is do this when it's right to do this, but then don't do it when it's not right to do this. And you get a lot of that. You'll get so much advice. The trick for you is to learn when this advice applies to your writing and how. You want to be trying these things out. My favorite example of this, when I was a new writer trying to figure out how to do this, I was reading two very popular and very effective works on writing. One is called On Writing by Stephen King. It's a great book. Another one is called How to Write Science Fiction and Fantasy by Orson Scott Card. These are two fantastic writers. And in one of them, I think it was in the books themselves and not the material surrounding them that I looked up, but it could have been the material surrounding them. Stephen King was mentioning that he, in order to write a novel, he can't have an outline. He says outlines crush the soul of the story, that they need to be free, they need to be loose, you need to put interesting people in interesting situations, let them take off and start going and see where it goes, and that's where true creativity happens. Orson Scott Card says, yeah, I use an outline, it's great, you should use one. And so suddenly, I have two great writers who have contradictory writing advice. And neither of them is wrong, and neither of them is right. The right advice is, I think that most writers would be advantaged by trying out both methods, seeing what works for them, and then learning when to apply which tool to which story they're writing, or the period in their life in which they're writing, or their personal mindset at the time. There are times where I like to do what we call discovery writing, where I like to just see where the story takes me. There are other times where I need an intricate plot in order to achieve my goals for the story and have it kind of come together at the end like I like it. And I use both tools. Some writers use only one primarily, some writers use the other. You should try both. And I'm going to try to theme everything I talk about in this course toward trying out new and different things, and trying different tools for your writing, strategies to be better writers. And so keep that in mind. So I might be saying, well, I am saying, we're going to try writing a novella. Why a novella? Well, I started doing this about 5 or 6 years ago. I found that the novella form works very well as a short novel. It has more in common with novel writing than it has with short story writing. And what it does is you can tell a self-contained story. Hi, are you looking for a chair?
I think you can share with me.
Okay, then you can come up here. Cheers! Yay, we're all friends here. We all write goofy stuff. Is there anyone here, by the way? I don't have to really say this anymore because it was so hard to get in. Is anyone wandering thinking, not even really knowing what this is, but you just took it on a whim? Anyone do that? Yeah? Welcome to the nerdiest place on campus. That's okay. Geek culture's mainstream now, right?
Yeah.
Totally it is. We're cool now, or something.
We're meeting in the basement.
We are meeting in the basement. They did that. Yeah. So that's the guy in the Batman shirt. I actually walked out today, and my son, who's 4 years old, he's like, "You have a Batman shirt?" And he ran to go find his. Because he got Batman jammies, so we could be twins. It was the cutest thing ever. So the novella. I feel like for you writing, we're going to try this out. Normally I do the beginning of a novel, but the thing is, my experience has been, nothing teaches you how to write a story like writing a story. Fancy that. And nothing teaches you how to do endings like finishing something. And it will be much more useful to you to say, I'm going to plot out and try and do something manageable in a chunk. We're going to shoot for 35,000 words. One thing that you should start doing as writers is thinking in terms of word count rather than page count. Because everybody thinks in word count in the business, and pages are malleable. For instance, I released a fun book called The Way of Kings a couple of years back. It's 1,000 pages long. I felt awesome. It's like, this is the longest book that's been released. And then I looked, and Pat Rothfuss's book was shorter, and I'm like, yes! But then it turns out it's more words. So he actually won. His book was longer. And George Martin beat his book. But, so, even though I had the most pages are malleable. You can do all sorts of weird things with page counts. Word counts are still kind of malleable. They'll change depending on how many big words you use and whatnot, because everyone just uses the Microsoft word count. I remember when I first got into this business and people were like, the way you figure word count is you put it in this font with this spacing and this margins, and then you assume it's 200 words a page, but you can do this calculation with the margins to figure out. Now everyone just says, yeah, you click the button that says word count, and you know how many words it is. So 35,000 words. This is going to be give you some of the scope of a novel. It will let you plot beginning, middle, and end. It'll let you really work with the 3-act structure if you want to, or with the different other plotting methods we'll talk about, and come to a conclusion and have finished something. If you are fortunate enough to be writing middle grade, anyone here write middle grade novels? Want to write middle grade? Okay, nobody's writing maybe. That's about the size of a middle grade, a short one. When I contracted for my middle grade novels, they said max size 50,000, minimum size 40,000 on my contracted ones. So 40 to 50,000, you could just write your middle grade novel. Most YAs are going to be longer. What were you telling me that 65,000? That we were just talking about, it's kind of short. Is that one of the Scalzi books?
It was 65.
It was 65. Something was short recently. But a lot of YA type things, it might have been, I don't know, something. A lot of things are around 65. No, it was Peter I was talking to, not you, so yeah. 65 is kind of the short end of what you'll find in novels. YA, that's about a good length, 65 to 85. So this would be not quite half of one of those. And then adult novels kind of go 75, 80 and up. I have a friend who had an adult novel at 70, and he had real trouble selling it. Everyone just felt it was too sparse, it was too short, until he inched it up another 10, 20,000 words. It's Eric J. Stone. whom I might have come in and guest lecture to you at some point. So, 35,000 words. We're going to try, and I'm going to theme my lectures toward building a novella of this length. I also have some credibility in this area since I won the Hugo Award for novella last year. I think I've figured out how to do this. And so we'll be talking about how to do it. But again, scale it, theme it the way you want to. We will probably let out a little bit early today, but since this is a once-a-week class, even if I have the short first class that you normally get your first week of classes, we still have 2 full hours for the full class, not for the rest of you. Yeah. So let's go ahead and talk. Let's go over the syllabus, all right? We'll start with the lecture portion. Lecture portion, people. So, you each have one of these, do you not? These things at the top. The same on everything is my stuff. Office hours. I have never been to my office. Okay? My office is somewhere in the JKB. You won't find me there. I come to BYU to teach this class, and then I go home. I'm not a real professor. I'm real when I said that. I teach as little as someone's capable of teaching and still teaching university. It's this class once a year, 1 night a week. You have Isaac's cell phone. Yeah? Yeah, in there. Isaac's cell phone? Peter put it together. You put yours on instead of his. You have Isaac's cell phone. That's good because my cell phone, I don't know where it is. So calling Isaac or texting Isaac if you have an emergency, we can take care of. You can get my email, and it looks like Peter mentioned. I'm bad with email, but fortunately, all of the email that gets sent to me also goes to him. If you need to get a hold of us, then yeah. Final, we'll go ahead and talk about that. Final for this class is usually a pizza party. I am frequently on tour that week for whatever reason. Am I on tour that week this week? Or is it Jordan Con or something? I'm frequently gone, so I just order pizza for the whole class, and then you come eat it and talk about how silly I am or something like that. Attendance is not mandatory at the final for this class. So that goes for both groups. So this is don't stress about finals with this class, all right? So we're going to talk about stuff. We're going to go to this next little page. This is only for the lecture series, people. I am going to grade you on attendance, and I would also like some feedback from you. It can take the form of any of these questions. Oh, look, man, Peter put this. This is what happens when you hire an actual editor as your editorial assistant. He puts it in an outline. It's all so much prettier than when I did this on my own. Write an answer to something like this. We're looking for a paragraph, or 3 or 4 lines. You're going to do it at the end of class or during the class, whatever. But the idea is it's something you hand in a piece of paper. I don't want these emails because then it's going to be harder for him to grade you. Yes.
I'm recovering from tendinitis.
Okay.
I
You're recovering from tendinitis. Okay, you can email. Okay, anyone else recovering from tendinitis? What I would like is something like this, and we're just going to put a check mark, say yes, and then this is actually going to be helpful for me. If the particular questions to talk about, this is what's going to help my writing. This is how I'm going to try to improve my writing this week or in the future regarding what we talked about in this class or my professional career, because we will be talking about publishing and agents and all of these things for part of this course. And so this course is not just about writing. But some sort of feedback, maybe themed toward you yourself, so that we can use this so I can look at it and say, wow, I should spend more time talking about this idea. If you have questions that you want answered in the class that I'm not getting to, you can go ahead and put them on here as well, and that sort of stuff. It's just something to come back to me, and then he'll let me know if there's anything in them I need to read. Are you going to be doing that? Maybe.
It might be Peter.
It probably is going to be Carrot, huh? It'll probably be Carrot, yeah. How many assistants do I have, you ask? I don't know. I can't keep track. All right. Now the big syllabus. The big syllabus I'm just going to go over for you. Those of you who are not in the workshop don't have one of these. But it really just says all the stuff that I'm going to say to you right now. So you don't really need one. It used to have a list of all the topics that I covered in the class. Today, when we were doing our business meeting, Peter looked at me and said, "You never follow that. Why do you have that on there?" I'm like, "Yeah, I used to take that off because I don't follow my own list." So this talks about my philosophy on trying to help you as a writer. If you want a copy of this and send us an email, we'll reply with it. With a full one. We just didn't want to charge maybe we should charge the English department. Look how many seats we built. We just didn't want to print off like 50 of these or 80 or whatever. But this kind of explains my philosophy. My philosophy on writing and on being a writer is that writing is a lot more like learning to play the piano or learning to hit a baseball or learning to paint a picture than a lot of people think. I've met a lot of people who think if I would just sit down and write my novel, I would write my novel. It would be awesome. Everything happens really well. The problem with that is if you look at an event turning you into a writer, it's not going to happen as easily. Becoming a writer is not an event, but a long-term process and transition as you train yourself, as you practice. Practice is the name of the game. And people who want to become a doctor, they say, well, I'm going to spend the next 10 years of my life learning how to be a doctor, gaining the credibility, and teaching myself about being a doctor. Those who want to play professional basketball will take, when they're very young often, and start saying, I am going to learn across the next 10, 15 years how to be an excellent basketball player so that I can play pro ball. If you wanted to learn the piano, you would not assume that once I learn this one song, I am a pianist. You would say, I'm going to practice every day for the next 10 years, and I will become a person who can play piano music. I want you to become people who can write stories, not someone who has written a story. Now, put that with the caveat that this class is the tool for you to use. There are plenty of people out there who you might be thinking this, I don't know, who are like, all I really want to do is learn how to write this one book that I really want to learn to write so I can leave it for my grandchildren or things like that. Or this is a fun hobby that I want to try. Brandon, you're pretending that I want to hit the New York Times list in the next 10 years. Where really I just want to take this class for fun. That's okay. I am going to pretend you all want to hit the New York Times list in the next 10 years, and then you can scale it down. It's much easier to scale down than scale up, okay? So just keep that in mind. But writers write. Writers practice. Writers are people who have trained themselves to write stories. One of my favorite stories like this. A lot of people talk about the power of ideas. That to be a writer, you just need to have that awesome idea. And that one awesome idea is going to propel you to stardom. These are usually people who haven't written very much and are not as practiced in the field. Jim Butcher. Anyone read Jim Butcher's work? Most famous for the Dresden Files, urban fantasy books. I really like his epic fantasy books personally. I like them a little better than the Dresden Files, but they're all well written. He was on a forum, early 2000s I think it was, and he was having an argument with one of these people. If Jim had not published at that time, he was an aspiring writer. And he said, no, it's not the ideas that make a great writer. In fact, he said something along the lines of, a great writer will take the worst idea and make a wonderful story out of it, and a bad writer will take the best idea and will screw it up. It's not the ideas, it's the skill set that makes a writer. And the guy said, okay, prove it to me. They got in an argument. And Butcher said, okay, give me your two worst ideas and I'm going to write a great book. And the person said, okay, write a book that somehow mixes Pokemon and the Lost Roman Legion. I confirmed this with Jim at dinner one time, that this really happened. It's been kind of the story I've been hearing. And he said, okay. And he wrote a book called Codex Alera, which is Pokemon meets the Lost Roman Legion hidden in an epic fantasy setting, and he sold that book. And it became a best-selling epic fantasy series. Okay? Yes, this really happened. Now if you've ever read the books, or if you go look at them, you can totally see, hey, those are Pokemon. He calls them the Furies, pet monsters. And anyway, they're actually really good books. So this is what I want you to kind of see yourselves as. Now, there might be someone in this class who's going to write their first book, and it's going to be amazing. There might be which was the genius one? Was it Mozart or Beethoven? They're both pretty good. Mozart's like the genius, is like, I have never played piano before. Oh, here's a concerto, right? That might be you, okay? Most of us are not that, but that might be you. They might be making movies like Shine about you eventually, where you're like jumping on trampolines naked because you wrote books in your dreams or something. Perhaps that's going to happen. But that's very, very, very rare. The vast majority of writers I've met spent a lot of time toiling in obscurity, and the mindset of, I am training myself to be a writer, I think will be helpful for you, whether or not you are secretly Mozart, for fantasy novels. We call that person Pat Rothfuss. I'm joking. He spent a lot of time working on that book. Anyway, so we are going to focus on word count in this class. Your daily assignment, your weekly assignment, if you're in the workshop, and, which I would suggest the lecture people attend as well, is going to be writing a certain amount of fiction every week. If you hit your 35,000 word goal by the end of the semester, then you will get full credit for that portion of your coursework. The coursework is, I have it broken up on here, I have it in 3 parts, I believe. There are 3 things we're going to do. One is weekly writing group submissions. We'll talk about writing groups next. You're going to submit to your writing group every week by Tuesday morning. Monday night, midnight, Tuesday morning, grace period. It's like by noon on Tuesday, you're late. Okay? You're going to track that on the next page. You're going to say, yes, I turned in the whole thing on time, and if not, you're going to say how late you were. It says %, but really, you can cross out and say how late you were. Okay? That's really what it should say. And you're going to get some points deducted if you were late. The reason for this is, the other portion is, you need to read your writing group submissions every week and make comments on them, so we can sit together in a writing group. If you haven't submitted by Monday night, you are increasing the stress and workload for the rest of your members of your writing group by submitting late. So if someone submits late, you are, as a writing group, not required to read that. Okay? I give you a pass. If it's not there by about noon on Tuesday, you have a free pass. I would still suggest that you read it if you submit later so you can give the feedback and things like that, but you are not grade-wise required to. This allows you to not have to look at Thursday at 3 o'clock and see if someone submitted just last minute and be on the hook for grade-wise reading that, okay? But if they have submitted, then you are required to read that and have comments ready. You have to read it before class starts. So no reading in class, but you can have read it just like the 15 minutes before class, whatever. It'll take you probably about an hour to read these every week, okay? And these submissions, I think we do 1,000 words. Yeah, you submit 1,000 words. And we'll talk about that in your writing groups about what you want to do that. But say you got to submit write 1,000 words each week, have 35,000 by the end of the semester. That's kind of a large course load. It's not terrible. I did 50,000 one year. I felt that was overboard. I did 20,000 another year, and that wasn't enough. So 35 is where we're going to settle. Yes?
If we want to write more?
You can.
Okay.
Yes. You totally can write more. Don't worry about that. But when you submit your final portfolio, I'm going to go look and see what the word count is. If it's 35,000 words, you get full credit on that portion of it. Okay? So really, what's going to happen is, if you submit every week, and you read every week, you've got 60% of your grade right there locked up. If you submit the full 35,000 words, that's half of your final, just submitting that. You've got another 20% of your grade locked up, and you've automatically got 80% done. I will then grade qualitatively. The only thing I will grade qualitatively is this final submission, and that is 20% of your grade. Okay? That's really going to determine, I have never given someone a 0, so you're probably not going to have to worry about a B-, but it's really going to determine B to A. Based on the quality of that. And I'm going to be looking for the things we talk about in class. I'm going to be looking for improvement in your writing. Okay? So, I want you to work on something new for the class because of this. Okay? This means not something you have written before this. You can have planned it and plotted it. You can even have written on it before. But the 35,000 words is new material for the class. Okay? So if you're in the middle of something, I strongly suggest you start something new. I won't require it though, just as long as you clearly delineate the 35,000 that you've written for this class. The reason I suggest starting something new is because we're going to try and write a novella. Those of you, this is some of the theme of the lectures toward that. And so together, writing a novella, kind of everyone writing one and working on it, you can really get more feedback from your writing group in a better way if you're all kind of working on in the same places in your book, or your story and things like this. I think it'll be more useful to you to start something new. But for next week, I would like you to submit something you have already written. It can be what you submitted for the writing sample. Next week is a kind of a freebie. You need to start writing right now, but for your workshop next week, submit something that you want some feedback on that you completed in the previous semester or something like that, which will, or if you get on the ball and write, you can go ahead and submit the first scene of your novella. But I don't want to require that because this is Thursday and submission is on Tuesday. I want you to have the full week for writing those. So I give you kind of the freebie on the first week of submitting something else. Is that clear to everybody? Okay? So, really in this class, it's quite simple. Write your work, submit and read, and you're guaranteed a pretty good grade. Okay? Like, everyone who's done that, you get a B, at least, by doing that. And if you listen and apply the things, you're probably going to do better than that. Okay? The only really bad grades I give are the people who stop coming and who don't submit and are habitually late and all of those things. In order to keep track of this, I should be able to keep track of it pretty well myself because I'll be able to visit the writing groups a lot more this year than I have in previous years. But I do want you to mention in your tracking sheet if someone submitted late so that you can write, I'm not accountable for this, just so that I can see and keep track. At the end of the year, you're going to turn these things in and I can see, oh, this whole person's writing group is saying they're late every week. I had to go look, and then if that person's like, I was on time every week, I probably need to have a conversation with them. Hopefully I'll find out before then, but yeah. If this is a problem for you, if you have a hardship, if something happens, come talk to me. I don't want this, this class is, like I said, a tool for making you a better writer. It's not supposed to be one of these horrible weeder classes that's so hard to complete or anything like that. It's supposed to be something that helps you with your writing. It should be kind of a relaxing class every week, I hope. No pop quizzes, no crazy stuff like that. Just writing and being writers. So, please do not lose this sheet. Now, for those who are actually in the class, you can earn a free week off, it says at the bottom, by going to Leading Edge. That's because sometimes people, you have a wedding you want to go to, or something like that. It's not necessarily even, what's that?
Said, please come to Leading Edge. We need more
Please come to Leading Edge. Yes. Okay. Well, I'll let you give a promo for it. Come on up.
You got a band?
What's that?
Let's go.
Okay, both of you can come up, but I'll talk for a minute first. So you can converse amongst yourselves about what you're going to talk about. I'll have you up in a second. The reason for this is to give you a freebie week. This is your only freebie week. Okay? It's by going and earning that up. This lets you, like I said, if there's a wedding that you miss. I mean, there's not. Because this is a 3-hour once-a-week class, missing a class is a pretty big deal. Plus, we don't even really worry about the final. And so, missing a class for your whole writing group can be tough on the writing group. If we have 2 people gone in a week, it can mean that the writing group has real struggles that week. There's not enough submissions, anyway. So I want people to be attending the class. This gives you your free week. So use it whenever you want. And in exchange, you go to Leading Edge. Come up and tell us what Leading Edge is. Yay!
Okay, so I'm managing editor of Leading Edge this year. This is Marie. She is my, I don't know what you are, vice editor.
editor, vice editor.
Yeah.
Yes. So we meet Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7:30 on the 4th floor of the JKB, and that includes tonight.
Yes.
Except for I won't be here.
Yes.
Anyway, I'll be here tonight.
So if you're in the writing workshop, you can't go on Thursdays.
You can come.
You can come after, but it
Yeah, you
won't
can
count for
come to the
this.
second half of it.
Yeah. Mhm.
We would love you to come for the second half of it.
Yeah.
When you come, we get short story submissions from pretty much
Okay,
all
go
over
for it.
the world. We will give you a short story, you will read it and write comments on the story. And
Most of them are really bad, but that's okay because reading a lot of bad writing sometimes actually helps your writing because you can see what they're doing wrong.
it
Yeah.
makes you feel better about yourself.
It does.
And we're really fun people.
They are. And if you are looking for fellow,
Nerd writers.
nerd writers, you are looking for fellows in arms, this is a place to find it. You guys sit down. Thank you very much. I was editor of Leading Edge for 2 years or something, and I went for many years before that. I was,
You can tell them the room number's 4037.
room number's 4037.
I think we usually
40-35.
40-35.
We
You
use
guys meet in this fancy new room. Wasn't that in the house in the backyard? Yeah, it was. They've torn those down. They really have. They tore down. Yeah, I was editor for a while, and it was very valuable, as they said, to go read what other people are producing. Suddenly you realize what a lot of the cliches are in stories. After you read like your 5th story where at the end they turn out to be Adam and Eve, you're like, wow, that's probably not an original story. The characters turn out to be Adam and Eve. And you're like, wow, every one of these stories starts with someone waking up and looking in the mirror and describing themselves. Maybe that's not a way to have a dynamic ending, a beginning to a story because everybody does that. It'll really help you, and then you once in a while run across something that's just like amazing. You're like, what did this author do that's so awesome, and how can I learn from that? And the contrast is very helpful for you. So I recommend Leading Edge to you regardless. Those of you in the lecture series, when this gets out, Leading Edge is only a short time after. You can go get dinner and then go to Leading Edge. It's grand. Plus, I am still in a writing group with the people I met at Leading Edge. Actually, I met most of them at first time at Leading Edge, and then we all took this class together. I was adding it up. Back then we had about 25 people in class. Dave Wolverton taught it. And I think we know what happened to 8 or 9 of those people. And a lot of us are professionals. I was in that class. Dan Wells, if you ever heard of him, he writes horror novels and teen fiction. He's a full-time writer. My friend Kaylin, who's had a book offer, was in that class. My assistant Peter was in that class, and he went on to be an editor. Anyway, it's really fun. Hopefully this class will have a similar pedigree. And Leading Edge tends to have a very good pedigree as well. So there you are. That's how you get your free week. Does anyone have questions about submitting to your writing groups and things? Okay, yes?
How do you submit?
Yes, next, what we need to get on to next. So, I am less and less a fan of this because this was a great tool 5 years ago and it's kind of gone downhill, and that's LiveJournal. Basically, nobody uses it anymore. I think they do. I'm being mean to them. But it was a great tool back in the old days. It was a blogging website. The thing about LiveJournal is it's very easy for me to access your stories and your fiction if you post it there, as opposed to posting it somewhere else. We will talk in our writing groups about how you want to do that. If you guys, if a given writing group doesn't want to do LiveJournal, if you want to use a group blog, what's that?
Google Drive.
If you want to use Google Drive or something like that, your writing group, once we put you in writing groups, we'll talk about that. And I just have to write down where it is. I just have to be able to find your writing easily when it's time to read. And so we can talk about that. I have this whole LiveJournal thing on here. You don't have to worry about that. In the lecture series, you'll have to do it. We just can't use emails, because I did email for the first year, and something always goes wrong with somebody's email. And I don't know how often it actually did go wrong, but there's always an excuse with the I didn't get the email. And there are plenty of legitimate, you send it, and for some reason the email shows up 3 months later or something like that. That happens. And so posting it where you can see it's been posted and we can see it's been posted, we need to do something like that, but it also has to be behind a password wall of some sort. Google Drive works for this. Dropbox would work for this. LiveJournal works for this, so that you can check your story and make it so you aren't posting it to the web, just in case. I don't think it's a big deal if you do want to post your fiction to the web, but I don't want to force you to post your fiction to the web to be part of this class, okay? So, but we'll talk about that in the writing groups once we get into them, all right? Okay, so, let's talk about writing groups next, okay? So, I'm going to be dividing you into writing groups. That's going to be the big thing we do at the end of the course. Those of you in the lecture series who do not want to participate, you do not need to. But I will, for the lecture series, have a few writing groups that are meet together, talk about what happened, and ask for brainstorming sessions on your writing. You don't have to read anything before you arrive type writing group. Those are the least effective type of writing groups, but they still they can work for people. Writing groups are a method of workshopping. I suggest that people try them. However, can we make this thing go up? It's behind you or something like that. However, writing groups do not work for everybody. They're one of those tools that you are going to be required to use in this class, that once you're done with the class, you can say, this isn't for me, goodbye writing group forever. Well, probably not forever, probably until you take another creative writing class where they put you in a different workshop. But writing groups can be very effective. And I'm going to talk about how to make them effective. So what we do in our writing group is each week you submit your section of writing. The writing group reads it before the class starts and has comments and feedback. The comments and feedback are more along the lines of reader response as opposed to a writer dissecting someone's story. So, if you are in a writing group and you're giving feedback, so you are the workshopper, meaning the person who is workshopping, who is talking about the piece. The best sort of thing is to keep in mind that this is reader response. That says response. Reader response. It's an informed reader response. It's a reader response by somebody who's listened to the same lectures, who has an interest in a similar genre, who is wanting to kind of advance their fiction in the same way. But at the end of the day, you are just another reader. Your goal is not to make their story into something it's not. Your goal is to help the writer make a better version of the story they want to tell. All right? Let me start that. Help them version of their, I'm underlining their story. This means that you want to stay away from what we call prescriptive comments, and you want to nudge yourself toward descriptive comments. The difference between these is something along the lines of, ooh, you should have him find a magic sword. That's a prescriptive comment. Usually that's going to be wrong, though there are times when the writer will come and say, I need a brainstorming session. Let's talk about where this story could go. Help me out. That's the author saying, put on your prescriptive hat and tell me all the cool things you thought of. Otherwise, you want to stay descriptive, which means something along the lines of, I was bored during this part. I am not enjoying this character, or I find this character annoying, or I am confused right here, or this sort of thing. Learning to analyze what kind of emotional response and cognitive response you're having to the fiction is very useful for you as a writer to see what's working and what's not working in someone's fiction. It is also very useful for the reader to say, aha, they're confused about this point. Do I want them to be? Because sometimes you do. Sometimes the pieces aren't all in place yet, and the characters are confused, and so the reader should be confused. In the right way of confusion. Sometimes it's the wrong way of confusion, where the reader's just like, I have no idea who anyone is. You've named one character Bob and the other character Robert, and this is really tough for me because Bob is short for Robert, and then when Robbie comes on the stage, I'm completely lost. That sort of thing is bad confusion, all right? And so you want to be giving this feedback to the people. So, description. This will help with the biggest problem with writing groups, which is the writing group potentially hijacking your story, okay? This happens sometimes, particularly if a piece being workshopped is not finished yet. That's how it's going to have to be in this class. because you're going to be working on your stories as you're workshopping them. But normally, submitting to writing groups, I would suggest trying to submit something that is complete, because then you have you can resist the urge to kind of go off in the direction the writing group all says, "Ooh, you should do this, that would be fun." And suddenly where you started with a Regency fantasy, somehow you have like a space opera, and you've got this completely different story. I've run into a lot of authors that their writing groups kind of did this to them. The writing group latches onto one thing that's kind of awesome, and then the writer's like, I have to write that story instead. So this will help a little bit with that, okay? Now, if you are the workshopee, you need to do one thing in primary, and that is resist the urge to defend yourself. All right? All right? I'm going to be pretty strict on this when I sit in your writing groups with you. The whole point is that you want to look at this as a focus group. Has anyone heard how they do focus groups for commercials? Anyone know? This is a really cool story. So in Hollywood, they have these fake TV show pilots that they built that are never intended to air. And what they do is they bring people in and tell them that they are a test audience for this new show. And they will show them this new show, and they will insert to the commercial breaks that everyone's expecting the real purpose for the focus group, which are a bunch of commercials. And then afterward, they will try with clever questions and things to find out which commercials branded very well and which commercials had a lasting effect. And they show the same ones. What, you've done this?
Yeah.
You went in and did you think it was for the pilot?
It was a great pilot.
Yes. And it was all for the commercials, and they don't tell you that.
Well, that makes total sense.
And the reason for this is they want to influence or predispose you as little as possible, right? They don't want you to be realizing. Now, we can't do that in the same way, but the idea is the same. If you imagine when you are workshopping a piece, or you're the workshopee, they're workshopping your piece, if you imagine yourself as the fly on the wall who's just writing down what they're saying about your piece so you can get audience reaction to your story, that's going to be way more useful to you, okay? Now, so in the beginning portion of the writing group, don't talk. Another big part of this is, if they say, I'm really confused by this element, you don't want to say, well, that's because later on, suddenly you've ruined the anticipation and their ability to give you feedback on the big twist that happens. You want your writing group to know how brilliant you are. I understand. I have the same emotion every week where my writing group reads my bad stuff. And I'm like, but I'm really a genius. Go look at the Amazon reviews. Just not the 1 stars. And you have this natural inclination, right? To say, but I'm really, it's really going to work. Let me tell you how it's going to work. And if you're defending yourself, you're going to naturally want to do that and show them what you're trying to do, or you're going to tell them what you're trying to do instead of letting the piece do it. Much better is you're like, they're confused about this. Next week's submission, I will try and explain it a better way and use this as an experiment to see if I can get the information across to them. Then when I do my revision, I can move that explanation to this chapter where it really needs to be. Way more useful to you to do that. Another thing is, if you get in the habit of arguing with people about your fiction, it's just a bad habit to be in, okay? Number one, in writing groups, people are going to be like, well, I'm not going to give them feedback. Or, I'm going to look for all the extra awful stuff so I can prove to them how bad a writer they are. Both of those are emotions you want to keep out of it. And if you are not saying anything and not arguing, then it's okay. Then you're not going to run into these sort of things. I know it's kind of painful, but this is what you should do. I've done this a lot with a lot of different writing groups, and it works. Now, at the end, I do add the caveat. I don't know how to spell caveat, so I'm just going to write it like that. We add the caveat that if you have questions and you think it's not going to predispose or ruin people, you can go ahead. You use the writing group as your own tool. If you have, stay away from doing these too much. But if you're like, I am just so stuck, how do I get them out of this situation? Can we brainstorm? Or, you know, if I don't know, just questions. It's okay to do something, stay away from them. And I'll try to guide you in your writing groups when I can about how this works better. So, and some of you in the lecture series, you may have writing groups that basically all your writing group is that. You don't want to have the commitment of having to read everyone's submissions because you're taking 1 credit hour class. Instead, and it's not even required of you, instead you want to get together and say, let's just brainstorm on this story. Let's brainstorm on this story. Hey, I'm having problems with my writing here. Hey, my roommate hates me. Maybe somebody, you know what I'm saying, okay? So, the writing group is going to be, so we have, what time? Okay. Is that clock? What?
That's wrong.
That is 6:01? Okay. All right. I'm going to have to bring a clock or something. Maybe they'll fix it. Sometimes they'll fix them.
It's been broken for like 5 months.
Oh, yeah? Really? Okay. Maybe they won't fix it. I'm sure there's something I could do to say, hey, fix this. But I don't know what that is. So, yeah. So we have for writing groups, usually I try to end the lecture on time. 6:25, is that what it says? Is that what you're, yeah, 6:25. And like I said, particularly for the lecture series people, I mean, if I go over, you could just leave. I'm not going to be offended, okay? I'll try to end on time, but I'm pretty bad at it. You can just leave or whatever. You can come in 5 minutes late. I'm not going to be, it's whatever. And you call me Brandon. You don't call me Professor Sanderson, though it makes me feel good. You can call me Master Sanderson. Yeah. You just call me Brandon. It's okay. So, in your workshops, that means we have, because the class is supposed to get out at, 7? For the workshoppers, it's out at 7:40? Yeah. And so if we assume, which I usually like to do, we end at 25 after, and I give you a 5 or 10 minute break, we've got about an hour for workshops. That means with 5 people, they need to stick to about 10 minutes per piece, which is kind of hard, okay? And so in your writing group, I would suggest that you appoint kind of a team leader, okay? This is the type of punctual person who likes to keep track of time. And you can say, all right, if it's lulling, or if everyone's gotten into this discussion of sports teams instead, you can say, let's get back on track, and or we're done with this person's piece. That's what we'll do. I'll let you guys decide that. Though I want to say, for those people, these usually end up being the people like me. Can't tell, I talk a lot. For the people like me, try not to talk too much in the writing group. One other problem I'm running into writing groups is I sit down for the writing group and I'm listening, and one person dominates the conversation for every piece and has a reaction or response to what everybody else says. That's good because you want to lead the team. You want to be talking a lot. You want to make sure that people are getting their feedback. But if you are talking the whole time, it's hard for the other people who are more like Peter, my assistant, who are quieter. So those of you who are quieter, I do need you to pipe up. I do need you to say something about every story. I do need you to participate. And when I sit in your writing groups, don't take offense if I'm like, dude, you're talking a little too much. Let's try and make sure that you back off a little bit. And if you want to be the team leader, make sure you're calling on people or trying to. Each writing group will have its own dynamic. Some won't need this. Some will need this. We'll try to work it out together, but be aware this is sometimes an issue. So you have 10 minutes. You'll pick a team leader to keep the time. What I want you to do is I want you to start with good things. Writing groups sometimes forget this. It's very effective for a writer to receive feedback on what's working in their story. Because if they know what's working, they won't fix it when they go around for revisions. If they know what people are latching onto, what they're enjoying, it will teach you sometimes more than what the criticism will teach you, okay? So, good things first. Try to do that for a couple minutes. When you're doing your reading, think about what's working for you in the story. Even if it's a joke that was funny to you, this was actually funny. Humor can be kind of subjective, so knowing, wow, that joke went across with the whole writing group, that's good, I have some good, I understand comedic timing. Then you're going to go to large scale issues. And these are the things I talked about earlier. Now notice, I say large scale in specific because I don't want you worrying about proofreading each other's work. You are not going to be saying, you misplaced a period here, or you misspelled this, but if it's really funny, you can bring it out. Sometimes they're really funny. But you want to be talking about the form of the story, the characterization of the plot, and the setting. You don't want to be talking about the small things, okay? Don't waste your 10 minutes on that. If you are the type who can't help but do it, I know lots of you, go ahead and print out the pages when you read them, mark them up as you read, and then you can hand that to the person at the end, and then you have done your duty to the universe to make sure that typos are being stamped out, okay? You're smiling. And you like that? Leading edge lady? Yeah? Yeah. Yeah, okay, yeah. So if that's an issue for you, go ahead and do that, but I don't want to spend a lot of time. Now, if someone is habitually having an issue, you can bring it up. I'll probably notice it. A lot of these rules don't apply to me because in this course I'm your instructor, and so I will be more prescriptive than I normally would be in a writing group, because I have a lot of experience in this, and I will try to figure out what type of story you're trying to tell and try to help you shape that story as a mentor. So be aware, I'm going to be a little more prescriptive, and if you are habitually using the wrong there, or if you are not punctuating correctly, or if you use a lot of the passive voice and stuff, it's part of my job to try and explain that to you so that you, Since there was an application process for this, I'm assuming that's not going to be a problem for a lot of you. But yeah. So there we are. Is everyone clear on writing groups? Yay! Okay. So what I'm going to do for the rest of the class, because we have a few more minutes, is I am going to do a little bit of some crunchy how do you write story stuff, just to kind of show you what goes on in this class so you get something out of it. Then we're going to break into writing groups, and then you're free, okay? And let's see, let's leave that up. I'm going to talk about, wow, that does not erase very well. Okay, whoever gave me these is wrong. They say dry erase, all right, we're going to use their dry erase instead. A student gave those to me last year. Maybe they just wanted, I mean, they're not terrible. Maybe this is not a dry erase board? But there's wet erase. There's two types, right? So, let's see if that erases it. You ever done that? Yeah, it works. Let's see. Yeah, it looks like this is dry erase. So those markers are... Well, that's not even erasing very well, is it? All right, we'll just let the janitors come in and do that. Something's up with the board.
If the board is marking, sometimes it'll...
Yeah, the stuff must have come off on it. So, all right. So I'm going to expand upon this idea of discovery writer versus outline writer, and how you can try these different tools and what they might be of use to you. Because during this next week, since I gave you the free week, what you probably want to do is try looking at outlining or brainstorming a story. Now, so you can start writing it starting, next Tuesday would be my suggestion. So spend Friday and Monday doing that. Submit something you've already written so you don't have to stress about, the class this week, and just start thinking about what kind of story you want to do. First, let's talk about this idea. There are not two types of writers, despite what I just kind of indicated. There are writers who have inclinations one direction or the other, naturally. And there are stories that lend themselves to one direction or the other, but they are both tools that you can use. Discovery writing. Discovery writing is where you don't have any sort of idea ahead of time. You just start writing. Stephen King lists it as interesting characters in an interesting situation, see what happens. Mary Robinette Cole, a good friend of mine who's a great writer, talks about the yes, but, no, and method of doing this, where you start writing people in a situation and say, all right, what happens next? Does it work? Yes, but something else goes wrong. Does what they try to fix the problem work? No, and it gets worse, right? You've got a person with a problem, and then you just do yes, but, no, and for the rest of the story until the problem gets fixed. Simplistic way of looking at it, but that's a discovery writer's method of, what do I do now? Well, they try to solve their problem. So, you do want to kind of think about what your problem is going to be. This is going to be central to your plot. And we will talk about plotting a lot more in the coming weeks. But a story is about something going wrong, all right? And the good stories usually start with something going wrong on the first page, or something in the middle of going wrong, or there is an issue someone is trying to fix. And that may not be the issue for the whole story, but it is an issue that interests the character. How does Harry Potter begin? There's a problem. Harry Potter is this poor kid who's locked underneath the steps, right? How does The Hobbit begin? Bilbo's having a nice day, and then people come and ruin it. Problems are how stories begin. And you're going to want to do this. It can be something small. You start off with that. Discovery writers, the big issue with discovery writers is they tend to, when you discovery write something, you tend to have characters that feel more vibrant. Okay? Why might this be? Any guesses? People who were not taking it from writing skills? Yes?
They are solving the problems. You're solving the problem as the character as you write.
Right. So you're feeling, as you're writing, you're feeling like the character's feeling. Because you're like, I need to solve this problem. What do I do? What else? Why might this be the case?
Well, since it's discovery, it's kind of just like, it's all happening, and instead of plotting it out and having everything kind of die down.
Yeah. Was there yeah, go ahead.
They're not puppets.
Yeah.
I mean, they feel more alive because they're doing what they want to do when they do it.
Right,
Rather than
right.
having a puppet master control them.
Right. The classic, reasoning for this, as you just said, is like the discovery writer will put the character in a situation, and their response, their question themselves will be, what would our character do in this situation? And so they think about it and then do what the character would. Whereas sometimes a classic discovery or outline writer response is, what does the plot require them to do at this position? And this is something to be aware of as a contrast is. Wow, that's okay. So this is kind of a contrast. Now these are, when you get really good works by great writers, they will compensate it for these things. But these are the natural tendencies, right? Wooden characters. You can see how that might be the case. If you have this great plot lined out, and you're like, all right, the character needs to do this right here. Sometimes you'll be reading stories, and you'll be like, what? Why? No, that doesn't make any sense. It happens a lot in movies, where the character suddenly decides they need to, now I need to man up, and where there's been no foreshadowing or reasoning for them doing that, where you're like, that character would not do that. That character would run away crying, and that might make a better story if they did. This is sort of the thing. So we're going to put discovery outline. Ooh, wow, I get worse and worse every year. This is a visual aid on how to write fantasy languages. George R. R. Martin, by the way, if you haven't heard, calls these two types of writers gardeners and architects, which I like a lot. The gardener grows their scenery, the architect builds a frame. Now, conversely, discovery writers tend to have awful endings. Why might this be the case?
Kind of just stop. You get to the end of the plot, and then what?
Yeah, you finally get to a yes, no, or whatever. You get to the end, you're like, and they solved it. Yeah.
It feels like it'd be very hard to construct a good plot twist if you just kind of discover the story as it happens.
Right. Any other thoughts on this? Does anyone naturally write this way? Anyone in the room? Yeah, maybe.
I struggle.
Struggling. We'll talk about the line strugglers. Conversely, the outliners tend to have solid endings. And this is by nature. This doesn't mean that that a discovery writer can't write a great ending. It doesn't mean that an outline writer can't write great characters. But these are kind of the things you need to work with. Discovery writers, another problem with discovery writers tends to be never getting past chapter 3, really. Never getting past the beginning. This is because discovery writers tend to do things like they write a few chapters and they're like, wow, I just discovered where my book is going. That's so much fun. I better start it over now that I know what it's about. And so I can lay the foreshadowing. And then they start writing, like, and then they veer another direction. And by chapter 3, they're like, well, now I know where my story's going. And then they do it again, and they do it again. If you've ever met anybody who's done that, they've been writing the same story for the last 10 years, they might have this problem. Whereas outline writers tend to never want to, wow, sorry about that. Never want to revise. I should stop mentioning how bad my handwriting is. You just have to take it for granted. I don't even know why I do it anymore. No, they never want to revise. They want to get this story out of their system and be done with it. Whereas the discovery writers tend to like revision a lot. They want to prune and garden their story, be like, ooh, look what I'm discovering in this. You know, the discovery writers will talk about things like, my character surprised me today. I had no idea what they're going to do. They're taking over the story. It's so wonderful. And outline writers never say that. Outline writers tend to say stuff like, I'm almost done with this story, this dumb story I'm so tired of. Because they outlined it first, and so they're writing it again. It's like they've done the story twice. So, in fact, some discovery writers say that's why they can't outline, because if they do, they feel like they've discovered the story already and they can never get to it, but anyway. So, these are just kind of some natural foibles. A lot of people are something close to discovery with a bit of outline. These are people like, actually, George R. Martin and Robert Jordan both have said they're like this. These are the people who are the points on the map writers. Points on the map writers, what they do is they say, okay, I know I'm in Provo, and I know I want to go to DC. So they start with a decent idea of what their ending is, and a decent idea of their internal conflict, and then like, I'm going to go here and here along the way. And then they discovery write their way up here, discovery write their way up here, discovery write their way there. And that's a good method to kind of start with if you've never done this before. And it's a good way to kind of hedge against the problems of both situations. The discovery writer, you can still kind of have the vibrant characters and things. Just you're only made a few decisions ahead of time, but since you know where you're going, you still have an ending. And the outline writer, you know, can still plot out this cool ending, but can leave a lot of flexibility in getting there, and things like that. That may not be the natural thing for you. For me, I am an outline writer pretty naturally. I do much better in a story if I have an outline that I'm building. And I will build my outlines goal-based. How much time do we have left? What time is it? 6:18. I'm going to talk about that next week. Because we need to have time to split into writing groups. And so I will delve more into the idea of how I do this. It gets into plotting and things like that next week. But right now, I would like all of the people who are taking the workshop to go with Isaac into the workshop room. Actually, go have a break. Get a drink. We will split you guys up later. And so goodbye to you. And I would like all the people who want to add this class, the lecture part, to come up here, okay? And then we will go from there. So everyone, the workshoppers, congregate outside or something like that after your break. Okay, take 5 minutes, okay. So,